We are now ready. If you could start, please, prosecutor.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good
Today
evening.
in the dock, we've got Bathsheba. And the charges are conspiracy to murder, manslaughter, and an accessory after the fact. Right, Bathsheba, as you're aware, some of you may be aware, that in the Jewish tradition for the women, that after their menstrual cycle, they all have to go and do a ceremonial cleansing, which is a washing ritual somewhere where they go to the bath, and it's a personal act of devotion to God. Bathsheba decided to go onto the roof to actually wash and cleanse herself, knowing that King David's mansion was not very far, because I'm sure she's been on the roof before. She's looked across when David's been away and seen the mansion, and also that she is actually visible as well. But she decided that she was going to go up there and bath anyway. And it's a very small village, so everybody knows everything that is happening in the village, like we all know everything that's happening at the moment. And indirectly, the evidence showing that she intended, she didn't actually murder Uriah, her husband, but circumstances happened that she knew that Uriah was in town, and still yet he did not come to visit her because he was such a godly man, and he was so intent on being with the king, being in the army. It was very, very serious role he took, and he decided that no, I'm going to be dedicated to this role. So he didn't actually go to see his wife. And the manslaughter charge is where she had the washing herself, and she knew that Uriah wasn't there. But when she heard that Uriah died, David asked her to come over as the king, and she couldn't have said no to David because he was the king. But when she went over there and found out what he wanted, she just, we don't hear anything where she argued, we don't hear anything like that. She just went along with what happened with David. But when she found out she was pregnant, she sent a message by her messenger. She didn't actually go and speak to David herself, which says to me about the duplicity of this lady. Because now that I'm pregnant, David, what you gonna do about it? I've been a lonely woman. My husband is always at war, and he's really dedicated to you. I want some excitement in my life. So that is why she went on the roof, and that is why she had the ceremony cleansing. So that's why, as well, she's an accessory after the fact, because she knew, she sent the message to David. So David then had to plan and do something. So she knew that David must be planning or doing something. And she knew that her husband was there. Next minute, the husband went back to war. Next minute, he's dead. She went through the old palaver of, yes, my husband is dead, so I've got to wear this ceremonial black. I've got to do this. And straight after that, she went into David's house to be with him. So I think she was a lonely, conniving woman, and that is why she's in the dock today for conspiracy to murder, manslaughter, and also an accessory after the fact. Over to you, my learned friend.
Oh, you muted. To unmute. Yes.
I had to mute and then laugh. What a pile of nonsense. What a pile of offensive nonsense. What are you talking about, prosecutor? Yeah, I think if I didn't know better, I'd swear that you'd been out in the sun and the sun had boiled your brains.
There'll be order, no personal comments.
Well, the prosecutors bang out of order. How can you go up to, why is it that you can't have a bath on the top of your own roof without some man spying and interfering with you? How can that be your fault? I mean, this is just utter offensive nonsense. So she went, she was having her bath. Now, the king, David, he was wandering around on the roof. Why are you up there on the roof anyway? Are you, David, a bit of a peeping Tom? There's some questions about you, David. Now, just bear in mind that where David was looking from and looking down on my client doesn't mean that my client saw him. So to work from the premise that she knew is nonsense. Now, King David was wandering around. He saw this woman taking a bath. He was very, very excited by her and he desired her. Now, don't forget, it isn't like you could pick up a phone and do a booty call, as the youngsters say now. Let me just pick up the phone and buzz her or DM her or Facebook her or FaceTime her. It would have taken him time to find out who this woman was. You, David, went to a wholly, you got a private investigator because you decided to investigate to see who she was. Then, when you discovered who she was, you also knew she was married. You, David, overstepped your authority. How can this woman who is married then turns and says no to the king? She may very well have lost her life. She may very well have been disgraced. There's a lot more to, it's not simply straightforward as, oh, she's married, blah, 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 blah. Added to that, the king desired her. Where is it that it says that she conspired to have her husband killed? Now, I accept, and my client will accept, that after her shenanigans with David, she became pregnant. There's no discussion with that. But she was instructed by David to entice her husband back into the bedroom with her, so that when they both knew she was pregnant, but they wanted the baby to be put upon Uriah, her husband. Now, her husband, being the captain and a key person in battle, one of the things about being a warrior is that you don't have or use your energy for sexual activity when you are at war. So he was not having none of that. He was doing none of the horizontal Olympics with her. And although she tried various methods to entice him back into her bed, he was having none of it. Now, I'd like to know, my learned friend, where does it say that she conspired with David to have her husband killed? Where is it? Yes, she's guilty of adultery, but adultery is not a criminal offense. She may be guilty of duplicity. Duplicity, for my learned friend, means involved in wrongness, but she wasn't involved in having her husband killed. The only argument you could put there is that maybe she should have come clean and told her husband, by the way, love, I've been doing the horizontal dance with somebody else, but she would have been disgraced. This woman stood to lose whatever way this thing went. She's not guilty of murder, not guilty of conspiracy, guilty of adultery, definitely, but not for murder.
Right.
Back to you, learning.
Right. As you said, and I totally agree with you, there was a lot that Sheba had to lose. That's why I said she was clever, unscrupulous woman, and she knew exactly what she wanted after the fact. Yes, she was not aware that David may have seen her. Yes, she was not aware when she went to the house. But then after she did the deed, as you said, she then found out that she was pregnant. She knew her husband had come back from the war. She knew that her husband was there. Like I said, it's a small village. We haven't seen everything that's in the scriptures, but I'm sure that they would have said, "Oh, your husband is back. He's in the ranks. He's in the yard and blah blah blah." But like David said, where did Uriah? Did he go home? And everybody knew David didn't go. Uriah did not go home. Then she sent him a note because she knew that Uriah was back. So she sent a note by the messenger to say, "David, I am with child." So now she's with child. What can she do? She's looking to David. She's not looking to her husband. So she knew that David would sort something out. She knew that David was in charge of the army. And when she heard her husband was dead, she didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. She was complicit to it. She was an accessory after the fact. And all she did, she moaned him the ceremonial way for a while. Then she went straight into David's house.
Defender, do you have a response?
Where does it say all of this? So you're making this up, love.
Well, I remember that we had to read the scriptures, and I remember it saying that she went and told the servant to go and tell David that she's with child. So that's telling me that she didn't want to go back to the house on her own because she knew what would happen if people saw her going back to the house a second time. So that is where I'm getting it from, which is in the scriptures. My learned friend, I'm sure you must have read it yourself.
So you don't think it was appropriate for her to tell the baby father that I'm having a baby?
She sent a messenger, and the messenger would have known what she was sending when he sent it to David, because the servants all knew what was going on. So at the end of the day, she didn't care then. She just knew that she had to tell David, this is what's happened after our actions, and what are you going to do about it?
Well, he needs to take responsibility. You see, it's one of these key...
So does she.
One of the key things is that when it comes to sexual intercourse, is that you shouldn't have sexual intercourse with anybody that you're not prepared to have a child with. Now, David impregnated her. And it wasn't that he would have 6 weeks pregnant by the time that she told him, and her husband was clearly not there. She knew who she had laid down with. Well, of course, he should sort it out. He should do the right thing. But I don't think her intention, she had no intention to kill him. She found herself, how do you tell a king no? How do you tell a king, actually, love, I'm married, this is not, how do you tell a king that?
No, I totally agree with you. She couldn't tell the king
Please,
that.
I'd like to...
And I don't believe that when David sent for her, she had to go. In those times, she had to go. But then when she became pregnant, she didn't go to her husband. She went straight to David to say, this is what I want you to do. I am with child. What is David meant to do about it? But he has to get the husband. They have to try and cover it up. And that is where the accessory after the fact comes in, and the manslaughter and the conspiracy to murder, because she knew that David had to sort something out. So she was in effect still dealing with what David wanted. So they were duplicate to both of them, to her poor husband Uriah. At the end of the day, I just think that if you read the story going further on, she knew what she wanted, and that's why she was on the roof, and she knew that David could see her. She was just a lonely woman who got herself in trouble.
No, there's no evidence.
Her husband's always at war. She's not much lonely.
There's no... And?
Defender, we can't hear.
Can't hear you.
No, I can hear you, prosecutor. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm saying to you is that you have to, as always, put yourself in her position. Just put yourself in her position. The king has taken a fancy to you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say that she took a fancy to him.
Mm-hmm.
So you are in a very, very tricky, dangerous position.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that you will be damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So the king has summoned you. It might be that the king might have wanted you to just come and stand up in his bedroom.
That's right.
He may not necessarily know that he was going to do anything with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the deed was done, she told him, because she knew full well that she had not laid down with anybody else but him. So instead of him just saying, right, I'm the king, Uriah, listen to me, mate. I've done the jiggery pokery with your wife. Tough. I'm the king. I can do what I want. What does he do? He kills him. He puts her husband at the front of the battle to ensure that that man is killed. But here is the bit that is very interesting, because he encouraged her in every way, shape, or form for her and Uriah to have sexual intercourse. And as I said, because he was at war, he needed to conserve all his energy and strength for the battle, not for the bedroom jiggery pokery business. And that man was full of, he was in a position of trust. He was faithful in David's army. He was a good captain, a man that was full of honor and completely and utterly respected his position. There is nowhere in the word that shows that she colluded with David to have Uriah put at the front of the battle. It isn't in there. David, took those steps, and she found herself caught up in the middle of it. So the conspiracy thing doesn't hold. Manslaughter. Now, we accept that she would be an accessory after the fact. That one we would take, because when she realized that her husband had been put at the front of the battle, a position he would not normally be in, then she realized what David had done. But he's still the king, so you have to do as you're told. Anyway, so
yes, that's right. Yes.
We accept none of the premise that you're coming from. Realize that
right.
how can one little woman fight a big everlasting a man who defeated Goliath?
Mm-hmm. A man who defeated Goliath, who was king. Yes, I agree that she could have gone to the house to discuss mighty other things with him. But when she found out that she was pregnant, this was the time for her to go and speak to her husband. This was the time for her to get her husband to come home. But this is the time when the husband did not go home, because he was so committed to the army. She never tried, and she sent a note to David, because she knew that if she actually went to David's house, that there would have been more problems. So I'm saying that she was accessory after the fact, and she knew that he went to the front, and she knew that he died. So at the end of the day, manslaughter is the charge, and conspiracy, because after the fact, she sent a message to David. David then called Uriah there. She knew that Uriah was there, and Uriah didn't go home, because they must have been talking in the village. And she knew that Uriah then died. And she never said a word. She just had her mourning, and then she went straight to David's bed.
But she didn't just go straight to David's bed, because David married her. It wasn't
that's the same thing in those days. Married, same thing.
No. David married her. It wasn't just one of these situations of, oh, you're the baby mother, you stay over there, and that's lovely, and I'll come and see you when I'm ready. No, David married her, and when you get married, what do? You should go and live with your husband.
That's right, and that's what I'm saying. So she was accessory after the fact, and she knew that her husband had died in the battle. She didn't ask any questions. There's nowhere in the word where she questions him or says anything to him. She just accepted the fact because she was a lonely, clever, and unscrupulous woman.
Right.
Oh, prosecutor, how dreadful are you? You must be unscrupulous.
That's why I'm the prosecutor. All
right.
Okay. Beverly Hall Pike, take note.
How can you be having a bath? You having a bath on your own house, on your own roof, in your own water, using your own bubble bath, your own Lux bubble bath that you've got from Boots. You didn't take King Solomon's, or King David. This is your own bubble things in your own jacuzzi, minding your own business, and a peeping Tom looks over and sees you. How can that be your fault?
Okay.
Because you know exactly where you take the bath. You know exactly who can see you on top of the roof. Yes, someone might be looking over. Yes, you may not be able to see exactly who they are. But the way you got there, you're naked on the roof. Me never hear of no other woman round that village who took a bath on top of the roof but Bathsheba.
Right.
Because
okay,
nobody...
we are now at the point where we open up the floor. There is one point of correction, though. She said the bubble bath was obtained from Boots. It was sandals. It was sandals, okay?
It was from where?
Yes. Or Jerusalem.
It was from where?
From Boots. It was, they didn't have boots. They had sandals. All right. So now we are going to open up the floor because a very interesting case has been put forward, actually from both. And I would also say, if you are using the words accessory after the fact, that is equal to a conspirator. So we need to be very careful with our wording here. So we're going to open it up to the courtroom, who I know must have lots to say.
Yes,
so
I do.
I'd like to speak first. Hello.
Can I be the first, please?
Oh, so, yep, Sister Faith, followed by Sister Holpike.
Where is Sister Faith? Where is Sister Faith?
She's put her camera on to speak.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Now then. Come on. You know, this woman had no idea that she was being ogred by the king. She did not know. So she didn't conspire anything. The king called her, summoned her to his bed. Who refuses the king? He's the king. She was in a very difficult situation. You can't say she didn't say anything because you don't know for sure. Perhaps she tried to declare to him, I'm married to the head of your army. I can't do this. Suppose I get pregnant, and all the time she's saying that, he's just kissing her up from top to bottom. until she was just too weak to say anything.
You see, Pastor Ware had to turn back into the room just then.
So she didn't conspire. She surrendered to a lover, a very experienced, handsome king who, you know, who would not be flattered? Who would not be flattered?
Okay. And now Sister Holpike.
Okay. Yes, I agree with Sister Faith. What I was going to say is that in that period of time, having a bath outdoors was traditional. Many people used the housetop of their accommodation for extra rooms, just like the lady who made a room for Elijah, the prophet, somewhere that he could stop by when he was traveling. So the housetop, and that's why many of them were actually flat. So they could put things up there, they could build higher and higher and higher. And so, yes, many of them did bathe outside. And if we think of Moses, when the princess was having her bath in the river, and that's when they spotted Moses in the bulrush floating down towards them. And so they were all outdoors. But they tend to have with them their maids and their courtiers to dry them off and to cover them. So in this situation, I think it's only natural and understandable that Bathsheba, after her menstrual, was doing her usual purification. So it was a special bath, maybe lots of beautiful incense and having a good soak and all the rest of that. So I don't see anything wrong with that. And I don't see anywhere in the scripture where she had any idea that she was being overlooked. There was no hint to say, and she glanced up and saw the eyes of David meet, you know, or she had a feeling that she was being spied upon. So I couldn't find anything to suggest that she was aware that she was being watched.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, when the king commands or summons somebody, you run. You run to their king. Now, in her case, she was taken. I believe she was taken. The king sent for her. So his servants that went, they took her. And I think, I haven't written it down, but one of the other translations says that when you're taken, you are, in a sense, kidnapped. It didn't say that she shouted or she put up a fight, but she was taken to the king. So it's not as if she waltzed over there knowing that he was eyeing her up, and then she went and had a good time while her husband was away. So she was taken, and having been brought before the king, she had to perform because she is a subject to the king. And as someone said earlier, she could have lost her life if she refused. So she was taken, and the deed occurred. And the issue of the conspiracy, again, I cannot find it. Over to someone else.
Yes, I do. I do agree.
Thank you.
She had no choice. When he summoned her, she had to go. You can't really blame her for anything. And I do believe the prosecutor is going to struggle today. Someone has already pointed that out. Because none of your charges ring true.
Anybody else got anything to say?
I think the fault is with David. He was lustful.
There's a very interesting comment on
Sorry, Brenda, I don't think we can hear you. If that's, was that the defender trying to speak? Sister Patricia, please speak again. Sorry.
I think the fault is with David. I looked at the New King James Version and the NIV, and after she slept with him, or he slept with her, it says she was purifying herself after, she cleansed herself as from her impurities. Now, she may have been very beautiful. She may have gone to the king. I'm not sure whether she protested, or he certainly sent messengers for her. But the messengers are also at fault because they know she's married. She's a child of God. So they should not be encouraging David to go and take her.
But he's the king.
But
But
the
it's a
fault
king.
is David.
It's
Don't matter.
Yeah, but no, it doesn't matter because then he is the king and he has the last word. So
Yes.
if he want to drag 6 women or 7, you can't refuse. You can't refuse, and you can't blame the messengers. They'll have to do as they're told.
Mm.
Mother Ware, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, David was a peeping Tom.
True.
He saw this beautiful woman and he wanted her. And he lust after her. And being the king, she couldn't refuse because like someone said before, she could have lost her life.
Yeah.
So
Has anyone, do we have evidence that anyone has lost their life for refusing the king?
Can I just say, his first wife, was it the king? Who was it that what king called his wife to do something or other?
Vashti,
that's it.
and she declined. So she could have declined.
No, she didn't want to lose everything. She didn't know what to do. Listen, I think you, Mrs. Prosecutor, I think you are being extremely hard on a powerless woman. Remember,
Listen, I'm the prosecutor, so I got to be hard.
In those days,
And all she had to
no say.
I totally agree with you. She didn't have no say, and it was the king. But when she became pregnant, she knew her husband was there because, like I said, we don't know everything. It's not written there in the Bible. But everybody knew that Uriah had been called back and he was there. She could have gone and spoken to her husband, but she sent a note to David. She didn't run to David. Listen, she didn't run to David. I sent David a note and I said, David, listen, I'm pregnant. What are you going to do about it? So I know that you're going to do something about it, David. Next minute, your husband dead. All right, my husband dead. I'm going to wear black clothes for 7 days. Then I'm going to go into the king's house, marry him, and have my baby.
Yeah.
The Lord had to take vengeance.
Mr. Holpike, you wanted to speak?
Yes, the question was if we knew of anyone in the Bible who lost their life.
David.
Yes, and David in particular, when I was struggling to remember the name of the individual, but he was out at war with his men. And they came to a certain land where he wanted a refill, of food and supplies. And he met with the man who owned the area, and he asked for supplies for his men. And he refused. Well, in the end, he died. But what happened was before he was killed, his wife heard, she got news that
Abigail,
her husband, who was a bit dizzy in his head, he hadn't responded to the king. So she went and got the servants to get the food and supplies to David, and that saved her life, because what happened? David ended up marrying her, but her
Abigail,
husband got killed.
That's right. And the husband didn't get killed. The Lord took revenge. It wasn't David.
Oh, beg your pardon. Okay.
Because he was drunk and Abigail left him, and then he fell over, and the Lord had his revenge. David said, the Lord has done this, not him.
Yes.
And he was so grateful. So at the end of the day, Bathsheba could have gone and spoken to her husband, but she chose not to. She chose to send a note to David. David, this is what's happened with our illicit affair. This is what happened when you called me. What you going to do about it? She didn't send a note to Uriah. She sent a note to David. Come on now, folks. The prosecutor is winning again.
I'm sorry, but
Excuse me.
Okay, wait a minute. If we just do this in order. First, Sister Patricia, then Sister Herbert, then Sister Faith, please.
Okay.
That would be great. This is very interesting.
You're portraying Bathsheba almost like a victim. So initially, David sent for her, and he slept with her. So was that rape or was that consensual? Also, once she'd found out that her husband had died, she did mourn, but it was David that's in the wrong here because he sent for her afterwards and he married her. How greedy is he? He's got not what? Is it 1, 2, 3 wives?
Hundreds it ended up.
Yeah, plenty.
So Bathsheba isn't guilty of, yes, she could have told her husband, and in hindsight, that would be the wise thing to do and say, this is what the king has done, and then move, because if they was, she did not know that he had sent her husband into battle at the beginning. David was the one that said, go sleep with your wife, and Uriah slept in the camp with the other soldiers. He did that twice, and then the third time, he said put him at the front of the battle, and then when they put him at the front of the battle, he was then killed. So she wasn't aware what David was doing, but she could have pretended that it was her child with Uriah, but she knew that ain't happening because they're at war. So she should have told her husband, but she didn't. But she didn't. She's not guilty of causing his murder because that was David's murderous heart.
The reason why Uriah died was because of the note that Bathsheba sent to David. I am with child. So think about it. They had to do something to sort that out. Both of them had to do something to sort that out.
Thank you.
I am with child.
Yes.
So David had to do something.
Thank you.
And yes, sorry, carry on.
Sorry, prosecutor.
A question to the prosecutor. She, or remarks to the prosecutor. She had no idea what David was going to do. And of course, if she got pregnant for him, she had to let him know that she was pregnant. She didn't conspire with him to send her husband out in the front of the battle because she knew nothing about it.
All right, then I'll tell you something. I'm sleeping with your husband, and I know that I'm with child, and I go and tell him, and next minute I hear that you dead, Sister Beverly. So what am I going to think? So, why are you doing? You just dropped dead because you hear that I was pregnant. Come on. Come on.
No. You're barking at the wrong tree.
Hey, Mom. Unmute.
Let's get real. You want to tell me, you ladies, or all experienced ladies, imagine, put yourself in her shoes. She's pregnant. Her husband had been away at war. He had no chance to put one in. How is she going to stand up or sit down in front of him and tell him, no?
All right, well, I tell you what I would do. If I was in Bathsheba's shoes, I would have gone and found my husband at the camp. But she never done that. She sent a note by a messenger to hide the fact that she didn't want to go back to the house. And that is why David had to sort it out. And she knew that David would have sorted it out. So that is why she's in the dock today.
Yes.
This could have been handled differently, right? David could have called Uriah. Okay, imagine the scene now. David called Uriah and said, listen, man, I know you're the head of my army, but I've got something to tell you. Something happened. Now, could a king do that? I agree that the fault is with King David because when the stuff hit the fan, he decided to send him out to the front of the battle so that he would be sure not to come back because he didn't want to face it. Once he did what he did, he didn't want to face it. And that was the big issue. He couldn't face the other man knowing that he took his wife while he was away in battle because, I mean, that is so wrong, it can't be any wronger.
Over to you, Sister Holpike, yes, I hear you, Sister Faith. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Oh gosh, it's gone out of my head now. Yes. No, what I was going to say is that there's no proof that she conspired or knew that he was being put at the front of the battle, because I believe it was David's plan. It was his cunning plan, and it didn't work. It backfired. And so he had to come up with something else and try to get him drunk. So the issue of, Uriah coming home and his wife, not telling him and so forth. Yes, things were a mess. And I believe she would have sent to David because she was in a panic. I mean, this is her first pregnancy. She had no other children. So it's the first time she found out, my goodness, I am pregnant. So it's out of a panic reaction, I would have thought, that she sent to tell him. And it's not with the intention that he should fix the problem or kill her husband. That bit came from David himself.
That bit came from David himself. And like you said, I thank you very much, Beverly Hall Pike. I'm coming right back on your word. They both panicked. David did what he had to do, and she was complicit to it.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to read out some of these comments, which starts with Sister Val's observation that the bubble bath might not be from Sandals, but from Aldi, but hey. And then we're saying, Sister Leslie is saying the prosecutor is struggling today. I don't happen to agree, And Sister Leslie is saying, I see what happened as rape, actually, which is a point that I think Sister Patricia brought up. Sister Brenda, the prosecution, harsh this week. And Sister Leslie is saying, let's think about the position of women at that time. Told her husband, I don't think so. I doubt Uriah would have been sympathetic. And Sister Brenda, what would have happened if Uriah had slept with her? Could I ask prosecutor or defender to be ready to answer that question, please? Sister Patricia, women had few powers, but look at Esther, is it? And Boaz, that's Ruth, lay at his feet. Also the lady who went into the presence of the king when not called, Esther, and told him about the plot to kill her father. Beverly Herbert says she would most probably have passed off the child as his. I think that was the point with Uriah, but that is a good one for both prosecutor and defender to take up. Sister Patricia, David is guilty. Sister Leslie, Bathsheba had no say in the matter. She was taken advantage of. I'd like both of you to come with that before we go to summing up, because there was a lot in there.
Right, I believe that, yes, it does say in the scripture that she was taken, and so yes, I believe that she was raped. But after that, when she found out that she was pregnant, she did not go to her husband. She did not tell her husband. Yes, I know it is difficult for women in those days, but as a strong, beautiful woman with a husband that is so committed, she could have gone and talked to him or even slept with him and then passed the child off as her own, but she didn't. She sent the message by a messenger to David, listen, mate, I'm pregnant, sort this out. And that's what David did.
Thank you. First defender and then Sister Herbert.
Okay, so I've just checked with my client. My client says that she wasn't raped. She can say that categorically. She was coerced, but not raped. Because
tell us a woman, clever man.
No, this is a woman who is fair. She's a fair woman. She says that, yes, she was taken to the king. When you are taken to the king, it is not a matter of choice. But as it happened, she did fancy the king, so it wasn't a matter of raping her. And added to that, the fact that the king married her, because he could have kept her as a concubine, but he actually married her after the death of her husband, says that their relationship was not based on one of the violent act of rape, but they'd actually got something else going on between them.
Mm.
They fell in love.
Sorry?
She fell in love with him.
Yes, she did.
He swept her off her
But she
feet.
fell in love with David.
Yeah, but he also desired her too.
Yes,
The-
absolutely. Right
But
from the first time he saw her.
Yes, but he clearly overstepped the mark, and the points made concerning a woman's status at that time. Remember that even in the UK, up until I think it was in the 1950s, women were still considered to be the property of men, even in this country, because women, it used to be women and chattels, and chattels were things like pots and pans. Once you were married, you belonged to the man. Even in this century, we still see that kind of activity.
Yeah.
So to say that she would have been complicit in murder is untrue. He was definitely in the seat of authority. He could, without any shadow of a doubt, because I want to bring to the prosecutor another interesting point here. When Mary told Joseph that she was with child, what did Joseph do?
He was
Wanted to walk off.
He was going to secretly walk away.
He was going to secretly. He was. Now, you watch what happened to Joseph. How do you explain? Joseph isn't a military man. He's not a man that's big boltier and large like Uriah. Joseph is a nice, quiet, gentle, decent, upright man that everybody's going to point their finger and said, naughty, 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 Joseph. You interfered with her. Now, Uriah is in a different seat.
Yeah.
Imagine your wife comes along and says to you, by the way, I am with child.
By the king,
Uriah,
who he adores.
Uriah would more than likely have taken her head off. Almost certainly he would have killed her, because it's a major disgrace.
Yeah.
And David knew. David also knew.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going
So to accuse her of murder is nonsense.
I'm going to now take just two more questions. Sister Beverly Herbert and Sister Patricia, and we are going to go to summing up.
Yeah. My question is for the prosecutor. Where are you? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening.
Right. How can you say that she did not go and tell her husband she was pregnant? How could she do that? He didn't make her pregnant.
The same way that she sent a note to David, she could have sent a note to her husband to come home.
But how can she do that? Right, and he did. Okay, when David found out that she got the note and said that she was pregnant, he encouraged Uriah to go home and sleep with her. And each time he went and slept with the men and slept at the doorpost and everything.
Because he was so committed. Because he was so committed to David and to the army, there's absolutely no way that he would go home knowing that there was a battle. So David, being a dishonorable man as he was, looked at Uriah, who was honorable, and Uriah would not do that. And he would have expected his wife to be the same for him. But she went and slept with David when she was taken. And as the defender said, she fancied him, because then afterwards they got married, so there was something going on. That's what I'm saying. So when she sent him a note, she knew
He was spying on her when she was bathing.
At the end of the day, if you're on the rooftop, you can, when you go to Jerusalem and you go on those rooftops, you can see everything. So you know that someone may be looking. So that is what she did that was wrong. I agree with you that when you go to the rooftop, a lot of them used it, but the woman who had the room, it was a room. It wasn't something that, and she locked the room when the prophets came, but she went and bathed on the roof. There was no ceilings, no nothing. So she knew exactly what she was doing.
But no.
That's precisely.
How do you know that is not something that she was accustomed doing, going and bathing on the rooftop? But he must have seen her before, then decided he's going to keep spying on her. And then when he couldn't take the spying anymore, and what he had got to the standard, then he decided to send for her.
Precisely, that's what I'm saying all along. Exactly what you're saying is what I've said.
Prosecutor, no, Miss Prosecutor, you her.
Exactly what you said. She probably done it before. She is sick. I have totally agree with your sister Beverly. She should not have gone up there.
No. That is the custom. They go up on their rooftops and they bathe. They can go up on their rooftops and sleep. They can go up on their rooftops and do whatever they want to do. You can't tell the woman she mustn't go on top. She will stop.
Okay. And who is watching them from the rooftop?
They don't really. If he wanted to watch, that's his business. He had no right to send for her.
Okay. We do need to move to Sister Patricia, who has been waiting patiently.
It doesn't say anything. Can you shed any light about Uriah and Bathsheba's relationship? Because it doesn't say that Bathsheba sent for Uriah for her to sleep with him. It doesn't say that she did anything against him. So it's not like she didn't say, oh, Uriah, I haven't seen you for a few months. Come, keep me company or for the night or whatever. She didn't do any of that. So is it her at fault or is it David? Because she sent the note to David to say, I'm with child. She didn't send a note to her husband say, come get me pregnant instead, so she wasn't planning to pass the child off as Uriah's.
But what we have to do is ask ourselves a question. Did she know that David sent for him and that he was in the vicinity? For all you know, she was most probably thinking that he's still somewhere out there on the battlefield.
At the end of the day, whether he was on the battlefield, whether he was just round the corner, she knew her husband. She was a lonely lady. David called her and David took her. So at the end of the day, she could have sent a note to her husband. She could have done all of that, but she didn't. She chose just to be duplicit and conspire with David. She sent him a note. Listen, I'm with child. What you going to do about it? I'm with child. Come on now. Let's be real.
Okay, right, we're coming now to, so thank you, Sister Patricia. We're coming now to summing up. Sister Elaine, did you want to make a point, or Sister Pat or Jennifer? No, you're listening in. She's listening in with one ear on the phone, that's fine. So we are now coming to summing up. So I ask you, prosecutor, Sister Patricia, speak. Sorry.
No, I'm getting ready to vote.
Oh, she's getting ready. Okay. Right, so prosecutor, then defender.
Right. As we've heard, and it's been absolutely wonderful, that Bathsheba, I think, was a clever and unscrupulous woman. She went on the rooftop to bathe, knowing that people could see her. David should not have been there, may I add. He should have been in battle with his men, but he was there. And yes, I agree with what Sister Beverly Herbert was saying, that she's been up there lots of time and people has probably seen her before and talked about in the village, but she kept on going up there on the roof, bathing naked. David said in the end, all right then, go, who is she? Bring her to me. And she went to him. And what happened was, when she found out she was pregnant, like somebody else said, she didn't send a note to her husband. She didn't try and palm off the baby as the Uriah's. She said to David, send this note, because she didn't want to go back to the house. She didn't want to look like a wanted woman. So she sent a note by her servant saying, I am with child, knowing that David would sort it out. How was David going to sort it out? It transpired that he killed her husband, sent him into battle, and had the poor man killed. So when she heard about it, she didn't argue, she didn't make a fuss. She went round to David's house. David took her, married her, and then the Lord took vengeance on the child. And that is why I believe that she was an accessory after the fact. Manslaughter, she knew, because she was living in the village, and I'm sure they must have known that Uriah had come back. Because if you're in a small village, everybody know everything. Nowadays, you've got the mobile phone, but in those days, everybody knew everything. And she didn't send for her husband, so conspiracy to murder. So her husband died. Let me wear the black for a week, and off I go to David, because I'm a lonely woman anyway. And my husband is always off at war. I need some excitement in my life, and that is why she's in the docks today. I rest my case.
Over to you, defender. Thank you, prosecutor. Excellent. Thank you, defender.
Right, to the prosecutor, I want to just draw to your attention the prophet Nathan. The prophet Nathan went to David, not Bathsheba, went to David and told David a particular story about somebody who had taken somebody else's property and had killed the owner. And when Nathan told him, David lost his temper, got really mad, and said, whoever did that should die. It doesn't say that Nathan spoke to Bathsheba, it says he spoke to David. This then indicates to me that even though it is a small village, as you have indicated, the prophet Nathan, once he'd told David this story, David said that person should die, and Nathan said that person is you. He didn't say that's you and Bathsheba. Nathan said that's you. That's what you did, pointing the blame squarely upon his shoulder. The other side of this is, really and truly, she was not in a position to really refuse the king, but she was clearly somebody that he was interested in, because he didn't have to marry her. He's the king, he can do what he wants. But he clearly saw something in this woman that made him say, right, if you discover that you are pregnant, of course you should tell the baby father. It's a nonsense not to. Why wouldn't you tell the baby father? It's ridiculous. So that premise doesn't stand up. The father needs to prepare himself for buying the cot and the crib and going to Boots or whatever place it is to go and buy all the Pampers. That's what baby father should do. So absolutely he needed to do all of that. The fact that he chooses to kill your husband is a little bit excessive. It's a bit far, because he could just kind of not just buy all the crib and the cot, and especially the Moses basket, which is what he should have done. Killing your husband is a tad excessive, but she was not in a position to even stop him. What was she going to do? Run into the battle with her belly and say, by the way, Uriah, that man's coming to kill you? No, she wouldn't have done that. This woman was caught between a rock and a hard place.
True.
And she made a decision. I don't think she even made a decision, because the impregnation, would she have wanted to become impregnated? No. She could see herself being disgraced. And the price that she paid a very big price for this, because the child that she subsequently had died. That's a child that she carried, and the child died after. So she paid in another way with death.
Yeah.
And she paid for something that wasn't her fault. She's entitled to beard where she want beard. It's not like she was bearding in the middle of Tartany High Street. Just her roof, her house, her water, her pool, her body outside. Those are hers, until somebody else looked over and thought, you're in my land, I'm the king, I want some of that, I'm having some of that, I'm having that. And the trouble with some of these things is that there are men who The more you tell a man, no, 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 get away from me, get away, the more attractive you become.
Yeah.
The more the man run your dog, the more the man harass you, the more the man aggravate you. So she may very well have just thought, you know what? Can't really be doing all of this dodging and running up and down and hiding business. The chances are when my husband comes back and discovers that the king's been running me down, he'll probably just say, yeah, go along with the king. So to accuse her of all of these things, I'm afraid, prosecutor, it's just nonsense, quite frankly. She didn't stand a chance.
No.
Didn't stand a chance.
Okay, I'm now going to, but the prosecutor, defender, have you said all you have to say in summing up?
Yeah, I think the prosecutor's horrible.
At the end of the day, what I've said is that if you read the genealogy in Matthew, Bathsheba is not even mentioned. She's just mentioned as Uriah's wife. She had a chance to go and tell Uriah, but she didn't. She only told David, and she knew that David might have done something. And that is why she's in the dock today. So I believe, and I'm sticking to my guns, that once she sent that message to David, she knew that something would have happened to her husband.
Boy, prosecutor, try your best not to annoy me today. Try your best.
Now,
isn't Bathsheba, Bathsheba the mother of Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived?
Now, we're now looking at 3 charges: manslaughter, conspiracy. What was the third one?
Nonsense, manslaughter.
Conspiracy.
Accessory after the fact.
And accessory after the fact. Okay? Manslaughter, conspiracy, and accessory after the fact. One of them, both prosecutor and defender have admitted to. What on the others, so we're going to look at each one separately, and we're going to find out where you see this fits. Now, the prosecutor, I'm just, as every week I do, I've made notes here. The prosecution is saying she knew where she was when she bathed, and she knew who could see her. And the other one is, if she can send a message to David to say she's pregnant, she can send a message to her husband to come dugu dugu, or to say that you are being sent to the front. The question, and we have a question, what's a jacket? A jacket is when you make, and so that's the prosecution's case. To confirm what a jacket is a term for any man who carries the blame or the child that might not be his as his, because bearing in mind there was no DNA testing. So if a man upholded, they have the baby is called a jacket, or the situation is the man's wearing a jacket. Okay, he's wearing another man's child. So that was put in the comments, and just to clarify, it was quite common and quite easy to do. The call, she could
not anymore.
He could have got Uriah to come wear the jacket, and that's, I think, is quite clear. Now, the defense case, she was simply having a bath and was interfered with. She's, people are trying to put the blame on David. Why was David on the roof? She may be guilty of adultery. She may be involved in some way in the wrongness. She may have had the opportunity to come clean and told her husband, but the woman was simply having a bath, and she was, to summarize what a lot of you are saying, a victim of circumstance. So again, this week, we're going to go through one by one. Guilty. So we're going to look at the charge of manslaughter. Do you find the defendant Bathsheba guilty or not guilty? Guilty. Let's see what your view is. Guilty. All right. Not guilty. Right. I think I'm looking. Thank you, Sister Patricia. She's using the blue one. I've got, thank you. I think she's been found almost unanimously not guilty of manslaughter. And I'm going to have to reprimand and ask for order from Sister Val, because when the defender said, "What's the jacket?" Sister Val said, "Jacket potatoes." Sister Oh, all right.
Maybe the similarity here is that they're both go in the oven.
Well done.
You people are just bad.
The second charge, that of conspiracy. Do you find the defendant Bathsheba guilty of conspiracy? Guilty? Not guilty? Again, we find Bathsheba, thank you, Mum. We find Bathsheba not guilty of conspiracy. Now, for the lesser charge of accessory after the fact, do we find Bathsheba guilty? Does anyone find her guilty as being an accessory after the fact? Guilty?
Yes.
Good.
And I'm her defense lawyer. She's guilty.
And you're her defense.
Yeah, she's
Do
guilty.
we find, right, do we find the defendant Bathsheba not guilty of being accessory after the fact? Not guilty. Sister Elaine sits on the fence with a lovely smile right there, but she sits on, and Sister Brenda, you haven't voted. Oh, this is so interesting, very interesting. The prosecutor has found Bathsheba guilty on all counts, and even the defender finds her guilty of one, and nobody is agreeing with that. Well, hardly anybody is agreeing with that. Okay, so all right then, we have found her not guilty.
Yeah.
That was brilliant, brilliant. So we're about to finish now. Would anybody like to say anything at this point?
I would just like to say that love comes in all kinds of peculiar ways. This was a very tragic story to start with. And Bathsheba suffered. She suffered when she lost her baby. Bathsheba was the women in those days had no power, had no, you're in a bad, whatever you do, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you do, you're wrong. Okay? If you say yes, you're wrong. And if you say no, you're wrong. So I couldn't possibly find her guilty of anything besides being a woman, doing what women do, having a bath. That's all. And having that bath changed history. So, she's just not guilty of anything. And yes, look at the way God did it. She gave birth after all that went down. God made her the mother of Solomon. I've always been in awe of this story of David and Bathsheba. Well, David's life completely. But the fact that all those blessings came to him with the punishment, the dividing of the kingdom, that was big and major and lifelong. And through it all, he loved her right to the end, until his death.
Okay, Sister Thank you. And Sister Angelica has had her hand raised.
Okay, thank you. I came on late, so I didn't hear all the arguments that were proposed to either of them or about either of them. But I just want to say this, and I'll ask this question before I actually say it. If Bathsheba had a problem with what happened to her, what made her not inform her husband? What would be behind that? I don't know. I'm just asking the question. Perhaps none of us can answer it. But there are some areas that perhaps could be looked into, and I mean outside of this court, we could look into those areas, because what we have said here this evening may or may not be the real thing. We have concluded based on the information that we have had and our perception, our perspective of things. But as Sister Faith said, it is a real story, and it is a story that, you know, perhaps we need to kind of find some more background to it and look into it. Because yes, we know the position David had. We also know the position that her husband Uriah had. And we know, yes, that situation with Nathan and what he said, even that could have been, you know, there's a counter argument to that. But the point I am trying to make here is this is a good exploration of the story, but it does not end here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sister Pat or Sister Jennifer, I can see you're there. Did you want to add anything at this point? Or Sister Elaine, or anyone who hasn't spoken to, hello, hi, anything, you want to add anything? You need to unmute. Press that unmute button.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. Maybe as Angelica said, maybe we need to delve more into some background information. And so I don't know if it's a mistrial or a retrial, but, you know, but I agree with what Sister Faith says in a sense that women didn't have any power, really. It's as if they were kind of powerless to a point. But the counter argument, as Sister Angelica said, if she had a problem with the situation, why did she not say it to her husband? But as you know, I think background information would maybe give us a clearer picture or understanding, because if she had told him, what would he have done? It, you know, it maybe her consequences would have been even severe. So because it's disgrace and whatever. So, and you know, the mere fact that she didn't tell him, you know, it put question mark over her as well. Yes. So yeah, because I'm reminded even of Joseph and Mary when you know, she was pregnant and he was mindful to put her away, because even though they weren't married, but she still bear the title wife because he was engaged to her. So she still bear the title wife, even though the marriage ceremony had not gone ahead as yet. But because he knew the law and all of that, that's why he didn't want to make a public show or disgrace of her. He was going to put her away, if anything, quietly. So I'm thinking it will be the same then with maybe Uriah. Why? Could be.
Yes, almost certainly.
Good. You could. Okay. Well, we're coming up now to the close, and thank you. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything more, if we should now go to closing prayer. But that was awesome, interesting. We can only go on what we could find out in the Bible. I know that in certain feudal systems, the lord of the manor, the king, the baron, the leader, could actually go into a village and take a wife and use her and hand her back to the husband. And if that happened, he would certainly have to give some financial redress. But the woman herself would not be put away, but he would have to pay for the child's upkeep. But we don't know how it was in those times where David was. We know since that there were certain rules. But it was fascinating. This is all we can do in the courtroom. Go on the research that we have in the Bible, and maybe if we can find encyclopedias or information, then we use that too. So it's fantastic that you're raising the questions you are. And thank you so much. So are we ready to close, prosecutor and defender? Brilliant. Thank you, Sister Beverly Herbert. Over to you.
Okay.
Oh, and there's a comment here from Sister Jennifer Wilson. True, I agree with Sister Pat. Thank you.
Okay. We'll close now in prayer. Father, Lord, we give you thanks for your word. We give you thanks for this forum that we can come together and explore your word, pass our opinion, agree, disagree, but all in all, it is good too that we can do this and we do it all in your name. As I pray tonight, Father, I pray for our sisters who are ill, and I have to pray for Sister Lai, one of our board members. I hope that she's feeling better. For Sister Rain. But I pray for each and every one of us that God will continue to protect and keep us under his reign as we give him thanks always for his blessings and his tender mercies. Your word means a lot to us, and as we continue to explore and go over it, I make sure that we all enjoy these sessions on a Thursday night. It is good because it always gives you food for thought, and with the thought, we will always be looking for answers. So we give you thanks, we give you praise through your Son, our Lord and our Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Before we go, Sister Beverly Herbert.
Yes.
I would hate to get on the wrong side of you, you know. I was enjoying the fist fight when you duffed up the prosecutor. You verbally punched her and left hook her and right hook her.
I'm going away with 2 black eyes.
Beverly, I was just leaning back, watching Sister Beverly go on, not having none of that nonsense.
I felt an uppercut at one time.
I know.
I must admit, I do get a bit when I'm I do.
No, love it, love it, love it, love it.
Thank you so
Love
much,
passion.
everyone. Love it. Yes. Thank you. That was great.
That was good. This was good tonight. Enjoyed every single minute.
Stay Elaine. Thank
you, ladies. Thank you.
God bless you, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Faith.